Hey everyone, and welcome to your deep dive. We're going deep on something I think a lot of us are thinking about these days, that feeling of emptiness,
hmm
and that desire to find some real connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So you sent us this YouTube video,
Oh,
and we are diving deep, and it's by Andrew A.J. Johnson.
yes.
Have you heard of him?
I have. Yeah, he's got some really interesting stuff out there.
Yeah, so we were looking at this video, and honestly, it wasn't what I was expecting when we first got the request to
Oh,
dive into this.
I
You
can
know,
relate.
yeah, it's not an article, it's not, a research study or anything. It's really
Yeah.
just this personal monologue,
Yeah.
almost like a stream of consciousness. It's raw,
Yeah.
it's honest, it's kind of rambling at times, but that's actually what makes it so relatable.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more these days, right?
Yeah.
This need to just express yourself authentically online and find connection,
Yes.
which I think really speaks to what you're saying about this emptiness and that longing for something more.
Yeah, and he really puts his heart out there.
Yeah.
He talks about this feeling of disconnect, like he's always felt different.
Hmm.
And he's creative, he's insightful, he's clearly a smart guy, but he just can't seem to bridge that gap, you know?
Yeah, it's like he has all these internal resources but struggles to connect externally.
It's like he's living in two different worlds.
Yeah, and it makes me think of all this research on how we often create these rich inner worlds
Oh, wow.
as a way to cope with feeling isolated. Like we're compensating for that
Yeah.
lack of real connection.
And this really hit home for me. There's this part in the video where he talks about weeks where his only real interaction was with a barista.
Oh, wow.
Like, ouch. I think we've all been there at some point, right?
Yeah, I've definitely had those
You're
stretches.
surrounded by people, but you still feel totally alone.
Yeah, it's that difference between being physically present and being truly connected. I
Yes,
think we often confuse the two, especially in this age of digital everything.
it's true.
Yeah.
We have thousands of online friends, but how many of those actually feel nourishing?
Exactly. And it's like we're constantly chasing the next achievement,
Yeah.
the next thing. But we never actually stop to connect on a human level.
It's that hustle culture thing, isn't it?
Yeah, hustle culture definitely plays a role.
Always pushing us to do more, be more, achieve more. But when does it end?
And what does it even mean to achieve?
Right.
It's not just about working hard. It's this feeling that we always need to be doing, achieving, optimizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it leaves no space for vulnerability, for
Yeah.
genuine connection.
And Andrew really pushes back against this idea of performance, especially when it comes to masculinity.
Interesting.
He has a whole rant about this alpha male myth.
I've heard him talk about that before.
Yeah, this idea that men need to be dominant and stoic to be successful.
And the research actually shows that this whole alpha male archetype is completely made up.
Really?
It's a social construct that limits men and hinders genuine connection.
I never thought about it like that.
You think about it, if you're always trying to project this image of strength,
Yeah.
you never really let people see you, flaws and all.
And that's what makes us human, right?
Exactly. Vulnerability is essential for real connection.
And it's so powerful that he actually talks about his own struggles with this.
Oh, yeah.
He's open about his attachment issues and insecurities, which I think makes his message even stronger
Absolutely.
because it's coming from a place of personal experience. He's not just talking the talk, he's walking the walk.
And that vulnerability is what makes him so relatable. He's giving us permission to be imperfect, to say, hey, I'm struggling too.
I love that.
Yeah.
And he even calls out what he sees as this unhealthy communication online.
Tell me about it.
It's all just regurgitation, he says. Like, we're
Yeah.
constantly repeating the same ideas
Yeah.
and never really engaging in a meaningful dialogue.
He's craving that depth. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. We're drowning in information but starving for real connection.
It's like we're confusing motion with progress. Scrolling, posting, liking. It feels like we're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But are we really getting anywhere?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is. And what I appreciate is that Andrew doesn't just point out the problem.
Right.
He offers a solution.
And what's that?
He says it's those simple gestures that matter.
Like what?
A check-in text,
Yeah.
a thoughtful comment, just acknowledging someone's presence.
Yeah.
He's practically begging us to be more present and intentional in our interactions.
And that's where the rubber meets the road, right? We can talk about loneliness and connection all day,
right.
but it's those small daily actions that make a difference.
And it's interesting. There's actually a whole body of research on this.
that's small acts of kindness.
Yes. And it turns out they can have this ripple effect, not just on the receiver, but on the giver as well.
I love that.
It's like this positive feedback loop
Wow.
that can actually start to shift our entire outlook on connection.
This is fascinating. Okay, so tell me more about this research.
So they found that even the smallest gestures of kindness can have these profound effects,
Okay.
like holding the door for someone, or
Yeah.
giving a genuine compliment, or just listening attentively when someone's talking to you.
It's so simple, but we often overlook it.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And the crazy thing is, it not only makes the other person feel good,
Right.
but it actually boosts your own mood and well-being too.
Yes, win-win.
Totally. And it can even inspire others to pay it forward, creating this chain reaction of kindness.
And that's what Andrew's talking about.
Yeah, it's like this antidote to that feeling of emptiness.
Yeah,
It's a way to break out of that isolation and start building those real connections.
I love that. And it's so simple.
Right. Like anyone can do it. You don't need special skills or resources, just a willingness to open your heart a little bit.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And you know what else is interesting? He also challenges this idea that everything has to be monetized.
Oh, tell me more about that.
He sees this constant pressure to monetize our passions, our very existence, as another barrier to genuine connection.
That's fascinating.
Like we're all caught up in this never-ending cycle of production and consumption, and we've forgotten how to just be with each other.
That's so true.
You know, there's this great quote I heard recently. It goes, "We're human beings, not human doings."
Oh, love that.
And I think a lot of people are starting to feel that disconnect, that sense that we've lost sight of what truly matters.
Yeah, it's like we're chasing external validation instead of cultivating internal fulfillment.
And it makes me think about how much our sense of community has changed.
Yeah,
You know, in the past, we had these built-in support systems.
absolutely.
Our families, our neighborhoods, our religious communities,
Yeah.
they provided us with this sense of belonging, of shared purpose.
It was a different time.
It was. And now in this hyper-individualistic world, those traditional support systems are often fragmented or non-existent.
We're more connected than ever technologically,
Right.
but more isolated than ever emotionally.
It's like this cruel cosmic joke.
Right. It really is.
We have all these tools to connect, but we're using them in ways that are actually pushing us further apart.
And that's where Andrew's message is so powerful. He's calling for a radical shift in perspective.
Tell me more.
He's saying we need to move away from this relentless pursuit of individual success and toward a more communal, interconnected way of being.
So it's not just about individual change.
No, it's about systemic change, too.
Wow.
It's about creating a society that values connection and well-being over profit and productivity.
That's a big conversation.
It is, and it's one that sociologists and economists have been grappling with for decades.
So it's not just about changing our own habits.
No.
It's about changing the very fabric of our society.
Yeah, and that can feel daunting.
It does. Where do we even begin? You know, Andrew talks about small acts of kindness,
Yeah.
but how do we translate that into real lasting change on a societal level?
It starts with awareness. Videos like Andrew's conversations like this, they're all part of a growing movement.
So we need to talk about it more.
Exactly.
Share our own experiences, challenge the status quo, and demand that our leaders prioritize connection and well-being.
We need to create a cultural shift
Hmm.
that values human connection as much as we value economic growth.
Right, because the two are not mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that our well-being is intertwined.
Yeah.
We can't thrive as individuals if our communities are crumbling around us.
And you know what I find so refreshing about Andrew's approach is that he doesn't shy away from his own personal struggles.
What do you mean?
He talks about his need to set boundaries, his anxieties, his own journey of healing.
It's like he's saying, look, I'm not perfect. I'm working through this stuff too. But I'm committed to showing up,
Yeah.
to being more present, to building genuine connections.
And that's what makes him so relatable. He's not preaching from some pedestal.
Right.
He's right there in the trenches with us.
And that vulnerability is so powerful.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that we're not alone.
We're all in this together.
That even someone as articulate and insightful as Andrew still grapples with these feelings of emptiness and disconnection.
It's a human experience.
It is. And it's something we can talk about, share with others, and ultimately learn to navigate together.
And that's what he encourages his viewers to do, to leave comments, to share their stories, to connect with each other.
It's like he's creating this virtual community.
Yes.
A safe space for people to be vulnerable and support each other on this journey.
And that's the beauty of it. It's not just a monologue. It's
Yeah.
an invitation to dialogue, to connection, to a shared experience of growth and healing.
I love that.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive into Andrew's video, I, I keep coming back to this idea of hope.
Hope.
Yeah, despite all the challenges he highlights,
Yeah.
there's this underlying sense of optimism,
Right.
a belief that we can create a better world, a more connected world.
And that hope comes from recognizing that we're not powerless.
Exactly.
Mm.
We have the power to choose how we engage with technology, how we build our communities, and how we cultivate genuine connection in our lives.
It's empowering.
It is. So as we move on to the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
I want you to think about what stood out to you the most from Andrew's story. What resonated with you? And what small step can you take today
What you do?
to move towards that more connected, more fulfilling life that he so beautifully articulates?
I love that question. It's a great place to pause.
It is. We'll be back soon to explore even more of Andrew's insights and to continue this conversation about connection in the digital age.
Can't wait. He's worried about this idea that we have to monetize everything, like even our passions,
It's true.
Yeah.
It's like this constant pressure to turn everything into a side hustle
Right. And he's saying that this mindset actually gets in the way of real connection.
because it turns everything into a transaction
Exactly. Like we're always looking for the angle, the profit, the return on investment.
instead of just enjoying the moment for what it is.
Right. And it's exhausting too. It's like we can never just relax and be ourselves.
And it makes me think about this decline of community that Andrew talks about.
Yeah. You know how in the past people had these strong social structures, like their families, their neighborhoods, their churches or synagogues?
Right, these built-in support systems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They provided this sense of belonging, this shared purpose.
And now in this, hyper-individualistic world,
Yeah.
those traditional support systems are often fragmented or non-existent.
It's like we're all just floating around out there on our own,
And we're trying to fill that void with online connections.
which can be great to a certain extent,
Sure.
but it's not the same as having those real-life face-to-face interactions.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like we're more connected than ever technologically,
Right.
but more isolated than ever emotionally.
It's this weird paradox.
It is. And it's at the heart of what Andrew's trying to get at in this video.
He's calling for a pretty radical shift in perspective.
Oh, yeah?
He's saying we need to move away from this obsession with individual success and focus more on building a more communal, interconnected way of being.
It's not just about me, me, me.
Exactly.
It's about
us.
So it's not just about individual change then. It's about systemic change too.
Exactly. It's about creating a society that values connection and well-being.
Over profit and productivity.
Right. And that's a big conversation.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's one that I think a lot of people are starting to have.
More and more every day.
So where do we even begin? Andrew talks about these small acts of kindness.
Yeah.
But how do we scale that up?
Yeah.
How do we translate that into real lasting change on a societal level?
It starts with raising awareness. Conversations like the one we're having right now are so important.
Because they help us to see the problem.
Right. And to start thinking about solutions.
So we need to keep talking about it.
Exactly.
Share our own experiences, challenge the status quo, and demand that our leaders prioritize connection and well-being.
I need to make it clear that this is something we care about.
And that we're not going to settle for a world that leaves us feeling empty and disconnected.
Right. It's about creating a culture that values human connection as much as we value economic growth.
Because the two are not mutually exclusive.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our well-being is intertwined.
We can't thrive as individuals if our communities are falling apart.
And what I really appreciate about Andrew is that he doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
He's honest about his own struggles.
Exactly. He talks about his need to set boundaries, his anxieties, his own journey of healing.
It's like he's saying, look, I'm not perfect. I'm working through this stuff too. But I'm committed to showing up, to being more present, to building genuine connections.
And that's what makes him so relatable.
He's not preaching from some ivory tower.
He's right there in the trenches with us.
And that vulnerability is so powerful. It
Absolutely.
reminds us that we're not alone in this.
We're all in this together.
That even someone as articulate and insightful as Andrew still grapples with these feelings of emptiness and disconnection.
It's a human experience.
It is, and it's something we can talk about, share with others, and ultimately learn to navigate together.
And that's what he encourages his viewers to do.
Yeah, he's always saying, leave a comment, share your story, connect with each other.
He's creating this online space for people to be vulnerable and support each other.
It's like a virtual community.
Exactly. A safe space for people to connect and heal.
As we move on to the final part of our deep dive into Andrew's video,
Okay.
I keep coming back to this idea of hope.
Hope.
Yeah. Despite all the challenges that he highlights in this video,
Right.
there's this underlying sense of optimism,
Definitely.
this belief that we can create a better world, a more connected world.
And that hope comes from recognizing that we're not powerless.
Exactly. We have the power to choose how we engage with technology, how we build our communities, and how we cultivate genuine connection in our lives.
A powerful message.
It is. And it's one that I think we all need to hear. So as we continue our deep dive,
Okay.
I want you to keep that message of hope in mind.
Mm,
And think about what concrete steps you can take to create more connection in your own life.
I like that. So what's one thing you're going to do today to cultivate more connection?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to reach out to a friend I haven't talked to in a while,
I love that.
just to check in and see how they're doing.
It's the little things.
It is. And you know what? It doesn't have to be anything big or fancy.
Right.
Just a simple gesture to let someone know that you're thinking of them.
And that can make all the difference.
It can. And you know what else I'm going to do?
It's that.
I'm going to put my phone away more often
Yeah.
and be more present in the moment.
It's so easy to get sucked into that screen.
It is. But I'm challenging myself to disconnect from the digital world more often
Mm-hmm.
and connect with the real world instead.
I'm with you on that.
So those are my two things.
Mhm.
What about you? What are you going to do?
I think I'm going to make a point of having more face-to-face conversations.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, instead of just texting or emailing,
Right.
I'm going to actually pick up the phone or meet up with someone in person.
It's a good goal.
And I'm also going to be more mindful of my social media use.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just passively scrolling, I'm going to be
Mhm.
more intentional about who I follow and what content I engage with.
It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly.
I love it. So we've got our action plan.
We do.
Now let's put it into practice.
Let's do it.
He's actually really into tech.
Yeah.
He says he's pro-technology,
Oh, that's interesting.
but he's also wary of how it can be used.
Yeah.
Like he compares social media to this giant regurgitation machine
Oh.
where we're just constantly consuming and reposting the same content over and over again.
And are we really engaging with it on a deep level, though?
Exactly.
Right.
Like, are we letting it touch us, move us, inspire us?
That's the real question.
It is.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to get caught up in, the likes and the notification.
The dopamine hits.
Exactly. But what about those deeper connections?
Yeah.
The conversations that really stay with you.
Right. Like
Yeah.
the ones that make you think differently or see the world in a new way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge for all of us right now.
Mm.
How do we use technology to create those kinds of connections?
Instead of letting it isolate us.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a tool.
It is.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
And it's up to us to decide how we're going to use it.
So maybe it's about setting some boundaries,
Yeah.
being more intentional about who we connect with online.
And what kind of content we consume.
Right, because it's not about rejecting technology altogether.
No.
It's about finding that balance.
That sweet spot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one thing that really struck me about Andrew's message
What's that?
is this idea that recognizing the problem is the first step towards change.
Oh, yeah.
Like acknowledging these feelings of emptiness and disconnection.
Right.
That's where it all begins.
Just like that saying, you can't solve a problem you don't acknowledge.
Exactly.
Oh.
And I think that's so powerful because it gives us agency.
It does.
It reminds us that we're not just passive victims of circumstance.
Right.
We have the power to choose something different.
And to create a different reality for ourselves.
Exactly. And what I appreciate about Andrew's approach is that he doesn't offer any quick fixes or easy answers.
Yeah.
It's not like a 5-step plan to happiness or anything like that.
Right. He's not selling us a magic pill.
No, he's just inviting us to engage in this process of self-reflection and awareness.
To really look at our own lives and see where we're feeling disconnected.
And to start making those small changes.
One step at a time.
Exactly. And you know what else I really appreciate about him?
What's that?
Is that he doesn't present himself as some kind of guru or expert.
Yeah.
He's very open about his own struggles,
Right.
his own insecurities, his own journey of healing.
He's just a regular guy who's trying to figure things out.
Exactly. And I think that makes him so much more relatable.
Absolutely. Because it reminds us that we're all in this together.
We are. And that even someone as articulate and insightful as Andrew still grapples with these feelings of emptiness and disconnection.
It's a human experience.
It is. And it's something that we don't have to go through alone.
And that's why he's so passionate about creating community.
Yes, he's always encouraging his viewers to leave comments, share their stories, connect with each other.
He's trying to build this online space where people can feel seen and heard.
And supported.
Exactly.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Andrew's video, I'm left with this overwhelming sense of hope.
Hope.
Yeah, because despite all the challenges he talks about,
Right.
there's this underlying belief that we can create a better world.
A more connected world.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message.
It is, and it's one that I think we all need to hear.
So as we go back to our own lives, let's carry that message of hope with us.
And let's remember that we're not powerless.
We have the power to choose connection.
To choose kindness.
To choose love.
And to create a world where everyone feels like they belong.
Beautifully said. Well, that's it for our deep dive into Andrew A.J. Johnson's video on emptiness and connection.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
And to all of you listening out there, keep seeking those connections, both big and small.
They're out there waiting to be discovered.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
We're all in this together.
Until next time, take care.